like a banner of Buddha's teachings. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. Everything is impermanent, unreliable, changing. Dukkha, everything is suffering. And today we're talking about the anatta, that there is no self. So if you really, like, somebody asks you, it's like, oh, well, what's the Buddha's teachings? Like, you should always try to remember anicca, dukkha, anatta. Just tell people, and like, these are the characteristics of Buddhism. And it's like I said yesterday and the day before yesterday, that the Buddha categorized everything really neatly. Everything fits under certain categories, and it's like you can fit everything under these characteristics, the qualities of the anicca, dukkha, anatta. Anything which is being taught, you can just sort of like, it fits into here. And it's quite neat how the Buddha thought everything, and how everything is done categorically. And he was really brilliant teaching things in detail, and he gave similes, and there was never any doubt about when he was teaching that there's ton of, like, for example, like if you read the suttas, and we can go through today. We're talking about the anatta part, non-self. Very categorically, very carefully, Buddha always gives synonyms and similes and explain it very clearly, that there is no like a wiggle room, or it's like you could say, oh, maybe self is there. It's like he very categorically said, there's like, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. So yes, so all of these sign, mark, characteristics or quality of Buddha's teaching. So I read the first, the Dhammapada verse, like I started the other ones. So about non-self, from Dhammapada. All things are not self. When you see this with wisdom, one grows disillusioned with suffering. This is the path to purity. And okay, so you put it out there. Or the 𝑠𝑎𝑏𝑏𝑒 Dhamma anatta. It's an interesting thing that with the word Dhamma is like, so everything. You could say Dhamma, like we, as a translator, they have to think about how do you translate things, and then here it says 𝑠𝑎𝑏𝑏𝑒 Dhamma anatta. So you would say all Dhammas are non-self, but you have to find a word here which fits, and then Bhante Suchadu has translated all things. And so in this say Dhamma, it's the same word like Dhamma, the teachings. So you cannot say all the teachings, but it's like everything, no matter where you look, all things are not self. There is no self to be found anywhere. And when you see this with wisdom, the disillusionment, that you start, like we talked about it yesterday, the nibbindati. You really let me see what's the synonym for, or what the translations would be. Dispassionate. You lose interest. Disinterested, disenchantment, give up, forget, leaves alone. So it's like you leave alone. You lose interest in suffering. Isn't it strange? As if we would be interested in suffering, but because of like you see with wisdom that there's no self, you are disinterested in suffering. It's Buddha's teaching. So that's why it's so difficult. That Buddha was thinking is like, it's so difficult for me to teach these things, because people rejoice suffering. Actually, we are interested in suffering. We are not we don't have dispassion towards suffering. We actually, what the Buddha said, what normal people, unenlightened ones think is sukha, like is happiness. The enlightened ones say that's actually suffering. That's dukkha. What the enlightened ones say, that's sukha. The other ones you think is dukkha. So let's say for what would be, you would think if something is, it's difficult to talk about really nibbana, the ending of all. But if you really talked about it, just normal person from the street, do you think is happiness to be disappeared? And then it's like, no, that's, I want to exist. So they consider like disappearing as suffering, whereas the Buddha, enlightened ones, always said that's the highest happiness. So it's interesting. So it's like that would be just one simile, or example. But it is interesting that in the Dhamma we're teaching, the suffering, you are interested in suffering, starts losing its grip. You start moving away. You start turning away from that. You disinterested when the self starts disappearing. We don't fight the self. We don't somehow try to push the self away. The self starts disappearing. It's just sort of like you turn away from the self, and at the same time the suffering disappears, and you start going towards what the Buddha was teaching. So it sounds quite like as if you would get angry of self, or you push the self away with sort of like, I don't want it anymore. It's the opposite. You have this disillusionment, this kind of like not interest towards that. Like we just did the offering ceremony here now, 1:30, and one of the things that you asked me was like, what's the meaning of offering? And one of the things of giving gifts is you lower the sense of self. The sense of self is not so strong when you give something. It's just sort of like you humble yourself, and you're giving gift. It uplifts you, and because of that, the self is not so strong, and the happiness arises from there. So, yeah. And then being here in Singapore, and a lot of you perhaps come from, just assuming that you at least you're familiar with the Mahayana teachings more, and you come maybe from that background a little bit. And quite often in Mahayana teachings, big teaching is actually this emptiness, sunyata. And it's interesting what the Buddha was saying about sunyata, emptiness, or there is nothing there. It's a synonym for non-self. So in Theravada Buddhism, if ever you think of like, you see these teachings of emptiness. Well, like what is emptiness? In Theravada teachings, you can just say emptiness is a synonym for non-self. We're not referring, for me even, like for a long time I thought, sunyata, emptiness, it maybe it talks about nibbana, ending of all. You was like, that makes sense. Nibbana, nirvana, ending of all, that must be empty. No, it's really Buddha. It's a synonym for non-self. So if you ever see the other teachings, you read other books, and it's like, I wonder what do we think about it? Empty is non-self. So for example, there's a sutta called the world is empty. And then and the Ananda said to the Buddha, he says, Venerable, they say that the world is empty. What does saying the world is empty refer to? Ananda's asking Buddha. And the Buddha said, Ananda, they say that the world is empty because it's empty of self, or what belongs to self. And what is empty of self, what belongs to self? The I, the sight, eye consciousness, and the eye contact are empty of self, or what belongs to self. Okay, so we will unpack those things, the sight, eye consciousness, and eye contact. We will go through that what it means to have these consciousnesses, like Ajahn Brahm translates, and the contact, and like when you refer that self becomes out of those. But we'll go through that. But basically, you have to have something to see. You have to have the consciousness, your awareness to see it, and like you put attention to that, and then from that the contact is made, and then that becomes you. Perhaps you just glazed over that, but it's it's an interesting part of like it makes you. But all of those are empty of self, or what belongs to self. So it doesn't, your eye, or there's like these things we see, they don't belong to us, yet we take it as us. The pleasant, painful, or neutral feeling that arises dependent on mind contact is also empty of self, or what belongs to self. So, so these Vedanas and whatever feeling sort of arises from something we see. There's three kinds of feelings, or three kinds of, what does Ajahn translate? Forget now. Okay, well, I'll get back to it when I start reading from the book. Huh? Sensations. Good that you have a good memory. Whatever you sense, if you know, we always have to characterize, so to speak, everything into these three categories. We sense everything, no matter what it is. You see something, you hear something with your five senses, you taste something. It always has to be either suffering or non-suffering, or then it's neutral feeling, something which we cannot categorize. So we always sense through that. We always put them into this neat three Vedanas. It's hard to see these things until your meditation takes, your mind is very calm, and then you start seeing the mind start slowing down, and then when the mind is very slow, you start seeing that what it does, how it creates this illusion of self. But whatever rises these things, then they are dependent on mind. The mind depends on that. So mind itself doesn't exist. Another thing, we're going to go to that now soon, but mind itself is not itself nothing really. The one thing you have to remember, why do we talk about non-self, and we have to be so categorically careful how we refrain it? Why don't we just say soul in Buddhism? We're always talking about mind. What's the difference in soul and mind? If we were saying, like, if you use the word like soul, it means categorically that it exists almost independent. That it's not dependently rising from something. It's not changing. Whereas in Buddhism, everything is under what we taught yesterday. Everything is always changing. It arises from the conditions. It's dependently risen. Whatever the conditions make the minds arise, that's what mind is. And it's always changing. It's always changing. Always new one coming up. So you cannot categorically say, like, this is who I am, because it goes partly with that changeability. So you put your finger into it, but you point into that screen, into that frame, in that frame, and it's constantly changing. So you cannot just sort of like, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me, because the frame is all the time changing. My screen has a refresh rate of, I don't know, 64 or 96. I don't know what this is, but I cannot just say, oh, that's me, that's me, that's me, like, 126 frames per second. Like, you could do that, but it's every frame is different. Every time it refreshes itself, it's different. So you couldn't go just poking that little picture on that screen and it said, that's me, that's me, that's me. That's how the word self comes. So it depends on whatever it's on the screen. On the screen it's me, and then whatever it's the text or the picture or the sound or the taste in that screen is, that's me and that one mind moment, so to speak. So that's why if you study Abhidhamma, which we consider later teachings of the Buddha, you can start seeing that they start talking about things like mind. Mind is every mind moment. They talk about these mind moments are different. It's correct in a sense, but in the suttas it's never talked about that way. But it is categorically correct. So sunyata, there's no emptiness, there is no self. So they say the world is empty because it's empty of self or what belongs to self. Easy. Self, like this emptiness is not, don't have to think about it very difficultly. It's like, oh, it must be something some difficult to understand esoteric teachings. So it's like, no, it's just, no matter where you look in self, there is no self there. That's empty. You can also see that, for example, if we talk about the body, and you keep going with the microscope, you start seeing the muscles, muscle fibers, you go into the cells, keep going, and you start seeing that everything is actually apart from each other. Nothing is really touching. There's like even the cells are always like separated from each other. So you kind of just like this emptiness, a lot of emptiness there, if you really go into the deep level. So you cannot just like keep looking into a microscope and going deeper and deeper and deeper, and then somehow find self in there. It's empty. So now I'm gonna go into Ajahn Brahm's book of the Word of the Buddha, and I like this because Ajahn has translated really nicely. This just came, the Hong Kongese Bodhinyana International Foundation sponsored this, the new book, and I can see Ajahn Brahm has signed it nicely here. No, that's okay. So what is self? So self is made out of this component of this existence. So you might have heard somewhere passing that we call them khandhas in Pali. So it's really just, again, sounds like a fancy word, but it's just like you put things together. What makes car a car? It's just you're putting things together, and time of the Buddha, they didn't use the simile of the car, they use a cart. And if you take a cart apart, so these days we would think about what makes a car a car. If you start pulling car apart, you take a wheel off, well, no, it's a car. You take 4 wheels off, still a car, definitely a car. You start taking different parts of, out of the car, and you just keep pointing, and you look at, they're taking your car, your rubbers are taking a car apart, and you're just looking, no, that's still my car, it's still my car. And what point does the carness disappear out of that idea? There's an idea of car, but in some point the idea of that carness disappears. It's an idea. And like you take it apart, and then there's just almost like just a shelf, but then it's like, okay, stop. That's not a car anymore. I don't see the carness into those nuts and bolts anymore. But then you start putting it back together, and then there is no, like, you cannot say this limit, that in this point the car ceases to exist, or if you start putting few bolts back again, that the car appears. It doesn't work that way either. There is this kind of like moment when you just almost like feel it, the carness starts to appear again. And the same with us. There's like, you cannot... Okay, let's put it this way. The Buddha, for example, at the time of the Buddha, they categorized everything under these 4 ways of looking everything. And then they said, everything is made out of heat or fire, wind or air elements, and air, wind, what else we have? Earth or solid, and then water. Right, okay, thank you. Good that these people know. So at time of the Buddha, they categorized everything like this, and then the Buddha said you can look everything like that. The same with the body. You can look into the body and say, oh, where there's heat in your body, there's liquid or water everywhere in the body, and the solid element or the earth element would be this like solid muscles or the bones and stuff, like whatever it's solid. Air, you're breathing in the gases, and there's gases in there, and like the blood has gases and the liquid and all that. And so you can, at the time of the Buddha, they really looked at the world that way. But these days we wouldn't use the same words, but we use like the body is made out of DNA or cells, but it's just a category. So you could technically contemplate when you're meditating, and the Buddha actually told the people, you can contemplate the body as you see through these elements, and it takes away this kind of like a solid sense of self, right? When you just see it, it's like really, if you start going through your body and it's like, where's liquid in my body? You're like all the different parts, and it doesn't make it disgusting, or it doesn't make it into it just sort of like diffuses the idea of self. Where is liquid? And my bladder, there's liquid. Maybe I should go to the toilet. And it's like the blood, there's liquid in the blood. And it's like all the different parts, right? We can picture it in in our minds. But at the end, when you do that, when you look at it through these elements, your body, you just sort of like, it doesn't feel like it's so strong self there, right? It loses that appeal. And even same if you look at somebody you fancy, and like like, oh, I really, have really strong feelings towards this person, but it's like, what part of that person do I really like? That the gases in their body. It's definitely not the gases, I guess. And it's like, so it takes away that kind of solid, right? It's not so solid that there's, but, okay, so body we see that, it's easy to see the body that way. Well, what about the mind? It's hard to see the mind is the most difficult thing really to see that it's not self. But let's keep going through this. What is the body and mind is made out of? By the way, before I go, another thing comes to my mind. Body and mind have to exist together. The body supports the mind and the mind supports the body. So you think that can the body exist without the mind? Once the mind has disappeared, or even if it starts to disappear and then it's completely gone, the body has to stop, it ceases. So to give an example, if somebody's in coma, to keep them in here, if you want them to keep alive, you need to evoke the five senses, that the mind. So that it's like you talk to them. You keep talking to them as if they exist, and then that keeps the mind separating from it. The mind starts separating. If it's too long, it doesn't get input, so to speak. The mind doesn't get input from this world. It starts separating and it disappears. It goes into the sort of next rebirth process. And it's not said anywhere, but quite often thought, but it's not actually in the suttas. But if you are too long in too deep meditation, if you go, sometimes they say 7 days, it's in the suttas, but it doesn't said in exactly this way. But if you, Ajahn Brahm and many other teachers say that if you pass 7 days in jhanas, in deep meditations, the body, the life force cannot keep the body anymore alive. You are so separated from this life, this plane of existence. You have to pass into another existence because you associate you've been too long almost in that one plane. So you just stay there. You won't come back anymore. So the mind has been there too long, separated from the body. It doesn't, so to speak, come back anymore after a while. But not to worry too much. It does. It rarely happens. But that's sort of how it works. And the same thing, once you go really deep into meditation, you go into this arupa jhanas, which are these are beyond jhanas. Like these starting to be like really what the Buddha didn't even teach too much, but they do exist and they're natural phenomena. If you go into these kind of really lofty planes, like really at the top, you cannot come back from there anymore. It's just sort of like, or it's difficult. You pass away, and from there the rebirth process starts to end. Wow, interesting. What comes to my mind is like, but these are just interesting things, and nice to sometimes talk about it. So what are we made out of? We made out of body and mind. So categorically, you always have to have a body and mind. Well, what did the Buddha say more about mind? So okay, so we have body. We call it, Pali word is rupa. Then is the other parts. What's mind made out of? We have Vedana, which Ajahn Brahms translated experience. We have oh yes. Okay, well, not there yet. Perception. So let's go experience first. Experience. What do we experience? Sometimes translated as your feelings. What kind of feelings do we have? Yeah, pleasant, unpleasant, and Neutral, okay, yeah. Or you can say suffering, non-suffering, and neutral. Or neither one of those. It's basically that we say neutral because we don't know how to categorize. It's sort of like, I don't know if it's this good taste or bad taste. And then we have sanya. You talked about sanya already, you said? What's sanya? Perception, right? So we always have to perceive something. We go a little bit deeper in this, like, well, how do we perceive and all that? But all of these are through all the senses. So there is all different kind of perceptions. What do we perceive? And then is sankhara. Well, that's a difficult one. What's sankharas? Will. There's too many Ajahn Brahm's disciples here. Sankharas, will, yeah. What? Anybody knows what other good translations are for will? Volitional formations. That sounds like Bhikkhu Bodhi. That's you read these translations, you always come to like, yep, that's Bhikkhu Bodhi, that's Banda Suchata, Ajahn Brahm there. But it's nice that we have these different translations and different people looking from different angles. So like somebody like Bhikkhu Bodhi, very, he's, I mean, there are other monks are technically minded as well, but his language, how he uses it, it's a very philosophical and so volition. Like, where do you come across these volitional formations? Well, like, do you read the Singapore Times and you see these words? No, will is a good. Ajahn Brahm likes to translate as a will because it's a just everyday use, and it really hones down. It was like why it's nice to use that word as well because we think we have free will. We will because I exist and I can freely choose, which comes back to the Banda Suchato's translation. He translated it as a choices, choosing, right? Because they again, I mean, it's like they're all bright, but they just sort of like, well, let's use this word. So I like Banda Suchato's as well, like choices. It is that. You think you freely choose, but you don't. It's conditioned. It's whatever happened before, what conditioned you, that's what you choose. So you choose Singapore food. I choose Finnish food, but that doesn't exist in Singapore. I have to get my mom to come here with me. Maybe that's what I should do. Every time I go somewhere, it's like, who's this lady? It's like, oh, it's my mom. She's cooking for me. So I get the best food everywhere I go. Okay, so like sankharas, right, and mental formations, yes, but let's not go there too. And then we have vijnana. What's vijnana? Consciousness? Consciousnesses? In plural, yeah, that's right. I was just teaching in Indonesia, and they were complaining. It's like they said we cannot translate it as plural. Like our language doesn't work that way. Because I was just like, I really was like trying to hone in this idea of consciousnesses. Make sure you translate it as a plural, and they said it doesn't work that way. But we sort of got around it, explaining that, always telling people like, so consciousness again is not one thing, right? It is whatever supports the consciousness. That's what we call it, to be simple. And it's just consciousness is whatever rises up, whatever supports your consciousness at that moment. And we give a simile later. That's who you are. And Ajahn Brahm likes to call it like, you have a screen on your laptop. Whatever appears on that screen, that's what is you at that one mind moment. Nothing outside of that. And that's the reason why we have to say there is no soul there. We cannot use words like soul. It's just, it doesn't match what we what the Buddha was teaching. Soul would be independent. It's not dependently arising. It doesn't just arise from the conditions, and it's not different every time. At least for me, not that I have spoken to Christian or other scholars or what they teach, but for me, that's what it sounds like. Plus, these are the 5 components of existence that are suffering. That's again, like what the Buddha says, like everything is suffering. There is no, you cannot say there is suffering. You have to say everything is suffering. So non-self means suffering. Okay. So what makes these components of existence, like what supports them? What brings them up? Like why are they there? Something has to support them. And we call them that, Ajahn Brahm is translated as fuel. And then the fuel, the Pali word is upadana. So something has to support these, like the body, obviously. Food supports the body, it's easy to say, but what supports the others? Everything really as a big picture. It's the Pali word is upadana. Upadana is, again, nice to think about it differently. What do you translate it as? Has anybody has a good translation instead of fuel? Have you heard anything else? Upadana? Sorry? Clinging, upadana? Yeah. Who uses that? I don't know. Upadana, sure. Clinging would support your 5 components of existence. Upadana, really, if you start looking the Pali word, and I'm sort of lucky to live with Pali scholars. Lucky. It has this kind of feeling of like uplifting something. You take up something. So you could say that's taking up. And it's like, you could think about it this way. It's almost like what the trees are doing. It's like a tree has a roots, and it's taking up the nutrients and the water from the roots, taking up. That's what supports the tree. So you can think about it. It's like the tree is being supported by taking up the nutrients and water from the roots. So it's just that kind of thing, taking up. So the same thing, like Ajahn Brahm translated, is a fuel. Something supports, something fuels our existence. Something keeps us alive. And the tiniest little thing, which if you, again, very rarely mentioned in the suttas, so it's like, as far as I haven't looked at too carefully in there, but what it's mentioned, there's this kind of like a life force has to keep up. It's almost like this little fire which keeps up, and what's the last hindrance for the jhanas? What keeps you away? What keeps you, if jhana has a hindrance? It's the life force. It's such a tiny little bit, but if you don't have that hindrance, you would disappear. It's like as soon as you go to jhanas, because you sort of so removed from this body that if there wouldn't be that tiny little hindrance, whether it's not really talked about as a hindrance, but it's like if the life force wasn't there, you would just disappear. But that sort of pulls you back into that. And it's supported by, I think it's craving. I'm not sure it's even talked about. It must be craving there, but that the life force there. But it's not talked about too much, but again, comes to my mind. And then, is that fuel, the upadana, the same as these 5 components of the existence, these khandhas, is it separate, or is it something apart from them? And then the Buddha said the fuel is neither same, or it's the same. It is the desire and wanting, what you talked about. It's like you're craving. It's a desire and wanting that is part of these 5 components of existence, and is that exists, that is fuel that sustains them. So what is the fuel really? It is the desire, wanting, clinging, whatever you call it, what we teach all the time. Try not to grasp so much. It's difficult because it goes so deep, this wanting, grasping. The further you are in this, you meditate longer and you start seeing like how the mind works. You can really start seeing as like where my clinging is. It's like this is where I've been holding on. First you see these like big levels of clinging. It's like this. Yeah, I can see that I'm holding on to the idea of self. I'm holding on to my family, Singapore food. Very gross ideas. We have preferences, and those are preferences are perhaps not always clinging, but we there's levels, and they go deeper and deeper, more finer and finer. And why I say maybe preferences are not, doesn't have to be clinging, because even the Buddha had preferences. Again, it's not mentioned often, but even the Buddha said that when he goes to towards his own, where he's from, that part of India, he said, I prefer the food in here. He said, it just supports my body better. I'm used to that kind of food. And so even the Buddha had preferences. The Buddha, it's not like the Buddha always went towards suffering. He knew that it's like, this actually supports my body better. This is better for my body, or whatever other preferences Buddha would have had. Where he had pains, but that's not a preference. But anyways, just an example that even the Buddha had sort of preferences, so to speak. Okay. So whatever these different khandhas are, the different components of existence, you always have to, if you really start seeing, you start looking into it, you cannot say, if you see it with wisdom, this is, you have to say that this is not mine. It doesn't belong to you. Like, this body, really, if you look at it, like we said, we can start pulling apart. You cannot say, this is not mine. This water element doesn't belong to me. This I am not. It's not here. This is not a permanent essence. And that, again, the permanent essence go into that thing we talked about there yesterday, the anicca part. There is no like permanent essence there. There's like, it's always changing. Everything in our body is always changing, and always changing in our mind as well. And I mentioned it yesterday. It goes with the anatta part, anicca part. That the Buddha said, if you really see that you try to find a self somewhere, you should say this body is self. This is actually who I am. It's like if somebody is like, well, who are you? And so it's like, this body is me. But nobody does that. Everybody, we always think like, yeah, this mind. The Buddha said, if you really see with wisdom, you see this body last long time. It's very slowly changing. Very, very slowly. And the body lasts for a long time. So you should, if you're wise, you said, well, body must be me. Because you can see how long it lasts and how slowly it's changing. But is it really wrong to say that your mind is yours? Or that you are your mind? Because your mind is changing constantly. All the time. Not just like you think that there's like thoughts coming and then no, not even that. Once you start slowing down or you're meditating, you start seeing that it's like these different parts of the mind exist one after another. But it's difficult to see that. But really, if you're wise, you say, I am my body. Nothing else beside that. And so let's talk about with body, and I can see that I've read this book many times because the Buddha talks about the form, the body exists, and it's what is the form component of existence. We're going through the components now, and the Buddha says 4 great elements. Great. So we've gone through that. Let's go through the Vedana, the experience. So you have 3 experiences. We have dukkha, sukkha, and dukkha, sukkha. So suffering, non-suffering, and neutral. Neither unpleasant nor pleasant, neutral. Through all the 6 senses. So everything you experience through your body, you can always, the mind always categorizes them under those 3. And what are perceptions? There are 6 kinds of perceptions. Perception of sight. So again, you've all the 5 senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and perception of mental objects. And that goes into, so we definitely understand that we perceive through the body, easy to understand. And again, it's quite easy to understand that whatever it's in the mind, we live in our heads all the time. Whatever you perceive there, that's what you call the perception. And then there's the will, We talked about the will. There's, again, 6 kinds of wills, volitions. And through the 5 senses, we're willing or choosing through our 5 senses, and also with the mind, obviously. We're regarding the mental objects. And then this is where it goes into that consciousnesses. And what are consciousnesses? There are these 6 kinds of consciousnesses: sight consciousness, hearing consciousness, smell consciousness, taste consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. So the consciousness depends on the other khandhas. By itself is nothing. That's what the Buddha saw clearly. By itself, mind or the consciousness is nothing. Whatever supports it, that's what it is. I guess I could... okay. It comes on the next page. So, the consciousnesses are depend on something. And let's unpack this a little bit. Like, what supports the consciousness? What comes up on your mental screen, so to speak? If the sense of knowing mind is intact, that's your screen. If the mind is intact, but no object come to it, whatever comes to that screen, come to its range, then there is no manifestation of mind consciousness. Mind itself doesn't exist. It's a blank screen. You cannot just have blank screen. The screen appears only when something comes to that. If the sense of knowing is intact, mind objects come into its range, but there is no conscious engagement. There is no manifestation of mind consciousness. Okay, it starts to get a bit more strange. Okay, so the knowing is intact. Mind objects, okay, so the screen is intact. Mind is intact. It exists. Mind objects come, something, what would be a mind object? Hearing, right? Let's say hearing. Only one mind moment. But there is no conscious engagement, then there is no manifestation of mind consciousness. You have to be aware of it. And this, where it gets interesting is, let's say we have a static noise. This is like how I like to teach meditation. You have a static noise like the aircon in this room. You can only pay attention to something which is not changing 4 or 5 seconds, perhaps. Mind always goes to something which is changing. Same like, let's say you're at home and your refrigerator been running and you just hear this humming. You didn't even realize it's on until it stopped. Then just like you realize the stopping. You didn't know it was on, it stopped, and then it's like, oh, it was so noisy. And now it stopped. So you sort of recognize the stopping. But then again, how long can you pay attention to that sound of non-refrigerators? It's like you cannot. It's static. So the same way, why do we want to have our bodies comfortable while we're meditating? So become static. Why don't we like just sit with pain for hours and hours and hours and think that's the way to Nibbana? Because pain is changing, variable. Mind always wants to go there. It's like it's just back and forth, back and forth. So I think it's a good simile for this kind of static thing, that make sure the body is comfortable enough. There's always going to be pain, a little bit there, but not too much, that you can just sort of like allow it to be there, and the body starts disappearing because of that, because it becomes static. That's the whole point why we need to sit comfortably. So, where was I? Okay. But there's no conscious engagement. So if you don't engage with something, it doesn't really exist because the mind didn't recognize it. There's not that kind of grasping or just sort of clicking. Another simile comes to my mind is just, if you're husband or wife starts keep nagging and nagging and nagging at you, and there's no conscious engagement. You just hear this noise and you just ignore it. There's no conscious engagement. It doesn't exist. Sometimes wives said that the husband is not listening. Yes, the conscious engagement is not appearing there. I'm sure they are, but they're just ignoring it. But it's sort of like a little bit like this, that you have to engage with that, whatever comes to your mind. So like I said, we hear the traffic there all the time, once in a while. I don't know if it's raining outside or there's sounds, but you cannot pay attention to everything at all times. You can only have one object at one time. So there's many million things. My stomach is telling me now something, and now I hear something, but the mind goes all over the place, but there's many things which we are not paying attention. And if we don't pay attention to that, like we ignore many signals from our bodies. Sometimes body could give you strong signals, but hey, I'm sick. But you don't, even if you don't want to hear it, that even suppresses it. It doesn't come to your conscious and awareness. It's interesting, so we can block it, we don't pay attention to that, or so yeah, whatever it is. If it's there, but the sort of like you don't sort of look into it, or you don't sort of touch it, would be a way to, if you translate it directly from the Pali's, like if that kind of like touching those two things that doesn't come together, well then it doesn't appear. It's like it's not there. Okay, so I repeat, but when the sense of knowing is intact, yeah, and mind objects come into its range, but there is no conscious engagement, then there is no manifestation of consciousness. Consciousness doesn't appear because you didn't engage with it. But when the sense of knowing is intact, mind objects come to its range, and there is conscious engagement, then mind consciousness appear. The screen comes up. If it comes on that screen, then it's you. Until then, it didn't light up the screen. And so with all the five senses, and each type of their own consciousnesses. So consciousness is reckoned by the particular condition which is it depend upon which it arises. When the consciousness arises depending on a sight and visual objects, it's reckoned as a sight consciousness. So we have, it sounds very technical, but it's just sort of like we put it this way. So we have to have something to see. We have to have the light bounces from the object, we see it, it goes into the visual object, we have the sight, we have the object, and then we have the consciousness arising from that, so you have to have that engagement to it. Then that's what we call it. That's the name of that consciousness. One mind moment you see something, and that's who you are. There's nothing outside of you. There's no like some kind of celestial you somewhere, or something which is not changing. This is what makes it interesting, that it's always changing, but it's always dependent on something. And you can only be, it gets a bit technical there whether this is exactly right, but you can you can only have one consciousness at one time. They sort of cloud each other, some of these things on each other, but let's just, take shortcuts here, but let's say you can only have one consciousness at times. So for example, like you can only see and one mind moment, and you can only hear at the second. They cannot sort of intermingle or be there in your mind arising same time. You only have one screen. Maybe ladies, you have 2 or 3 screens, but us men, we can only be aware of one. No, it's for everybody. That's how mind works. You can only have one screen, and whatever appears on that screen, it's you. Only one thing at a time. And the interesting thing is, like, even we talked about the experiences, Vedanas, what Ajahn translates experience, Vedana. So let's say it's suffering. So it's like, I see it. and then the seeing consciousness is there on a little bit while, and then it comes as like that was suffering, and then you hear it, oh, that was sweet, that was, and then all these like the categories follow each other. So even the Vedana, the experience comes after. Why I say it's a bit technical that with the perception, for example, the perception that it sort of clouds it a little bit. You can perceive something as happiness. Like let's say it's like you could see, like, even though, how would I say, it's actually not beautiful, but because you are conditioned certain way, you perceive it as happiness. The perception sanya sort of can cloud. It can change it. It's not like there's objective seeings. It's not like you see it and it's objectively always suffering or objectively always dukkha. Okay, let's say durian. You're just like, oh yeah, it's tasty. It's like, well, it smells nice. And then you bring it to the Finnish monk and it's like, well, that's not my conditioning. Durian doesn't have to be like sukha straight always. You have to remember it's dukkha from others. So it's not like there's objectively. It's objective. It's like everything is like, or subjective. So it's like however you were sort of like conditioned. It conditions also these things, your perceptions and all that. So you see that's like, oh, that's actually sukha for me. So it's interesting how it clouds these. The mind is getting sort of clouded. I hope I'm making it not too difficult, but again, today we're talking about this self, and like we're taking a self apart. There is no self. There is emptiness there, all through and through. You kind of find that there is self. I'm losing a page. Bear with me. So there's no like permanent essence which is not changing there. We went through Vedana. Honestly, I lost the page. Oh yes, I know where we are. We are consciousness, I know, but we were going into dependently originated. So everything is dependently. So whatever comes to you, it's dependently originated. It's like I said, that's why it's clouded. Whatever it depends on, that's how it's not objective what you see. Okay. Perceptions, will. Will isn't... So let's go for 5 more minutes and then take a little break so you don't just overload. I don't want to overload you too much. So the will component of existence. So you exist really strongly in your will, your volition or your choices. That's what if you really unpack it and you have really good meditation, you start going really, really deep. You start seeing that where I really exist, I don't so strongly associate with the body or my perception or all the other components, but the strongest sense of self, which is the most difficult really to overcome, so to speak, is your will. You're choosing. It's like we can sort of like take it on faith that I don't have free will. And believe me, I've read books about whether free will exists, and I've listened to a lot of people. And there's a wonderful book came, I think, last year about, and now I forget, but I'll when we take the break, I can look it up. But then, like, there's really amazing books written about free will or whether it exists or not, and you can read these things and sort of understand. There's like, no, you cannot have free will, but yet deep inside, we cannot believe that there is no free choosing. It's like it's impossible to live like that until you gone past that. If you go into the past the second jhana, or you go into the second jhana, deep meditations, you are beyond that. You realize that you weren't choosing anymore. You were just going along into the ride. Like Ajahn Brahm has that driverless bus. You're not choosing. You're just going along on the ride. But all the time you think you're steering the bus. There's nobody actually in the bus either, but you think you're you're there. The bus exists, but there's no even driver there. But you think you're on a driver wheel. So dependently origination. Let's take the break now, and then we go into the dependent origination of consciousnesses. So we meditate for 15 minutes. No, okay, let's take the about 15-minute break. If you need to stretch, go outside, use toilet. Try not to talk too much in the hall, or please don't talk in the hall. It's like almost like a little bit of retreat, or if you really need to talk, go outside. And rest of us, we meditate here, okay? Beyond our control. So it was interesting book was it 2023 came out? Determine is the book called. So we just talked about will and other components of existence, and we talked about the feel. So everything is supported by something, and it's like quite often I give this simile at like I feel that in Buddha's teaching Dhamma, everything is like gears, and you cannot just remove one gear and think that everything else is going to work. It's same with this, like why is it very important that we understand that everything is just components of existence, that is made out of parts, or just like this, or it's kind of like a stream, but there's no like self there. Why is it really important? It's important because if there was a self there, if there was like some kind of person exist, or if there was a soul, Nibbana itself would be impossible. If there was something there, I read the first sutta in the sunyata, emptiness, that everything is empty of self. If it wasn't empty of self, we would have to end something. Something would have to be sort of annihilated. In Buddhism, we don't talk about annihilation. Like we don't end anything. That's why Nibbana, ending of all sufferings, is possible, because it's almost like it's like just a movement. It's made out of things. It's coming, parts coming together, supported by fuel. But once the fuel is burned up, so to speak, it just ends. There is no like permanent fixed essence there. That's what makes the Nibbana possible, and that's why you cannot just start. We have to be very careful how we teach, and it's like make sure that all the wheels support each other and not start removing wheels from there. And the Buddha gave a simile of this fuel, or how it works with the simile of a candle. If you have a candle, you have the wax and the wick, and then you have the flame there. And if the wind, for example, blows the flame out, the heat is not there anymore. It's a wrong way to ask. You cannot ask, where did the flame went. Where did the candle goes? We can see there's a candle. We can clearly see you are there. You exist. You are made out of components. Same with the candle is made out of 3 components. But when the flame goes out, you cannot just say, I wonder where the flame went. You don't ask those kind of questions. The flame doesn't go to the heaven of flames. It's when you turn off the lights, where did the light go? It's like sure, yeah, we can talk, say something like, at speed of light, and there's like the movements, the waves are there, but you're taking it too far. But the flame or the light doesn't go anywhere when you turn off the electricity. And that's the key point as well, is that's what Nibbana means, ending of all suffering, Nirvana or Nibbana. It's just the flame goes out. So where does the Buddha go after he passes away? That's a question which you cannot ask. You go beyond questioning. The flame went out. Where did it go? It doesn't go anywhere. It was an idea. Flame, it's a field by something. When somebody, Arahant dies or Buddha dies, you cannot sort of say they go somewhere. It's that the reason is wrong, because there was nobody there to begin with. It's empty. You are empty. We don't try to end you. That's not what we're doing in Buddhism. It's not you ending. It's just idea coming together. You're not, the holding on just stops. Feel is ceased. So the dependency of consciousness is, even though you might say that apart from our bodies, apart from experiences, perception, will, that you can make something, knowing that you can say that is like how their consciousness comes and goes, their passing away and rebirth, their growth, increase and expansion is impossible. Just as two sheaves of reed might stand leaning against each other, so do with the objects of consciousness. So whatever the object is supporting the consciousness, as a condition, consciousness comes to be. With consciousness as a condition, objects of consciousness come to be. So when the consciousness supports your object, let's say the seeing, you see, it supports the consciousness. Consciousness supports that object. Together they stand. And that's you in that one mind moment. There's nothing beyond that. There's no eternal soul or you behind that one mind moment supporting each other. The consciousness and the object supporting each other. When one of them disappear, you change an object, disappears, and if no new one comes to being, I mean, this would be nibbana, but let's just say that something would disappear and nothing comes. Consciousness cannot support itself. It's by itself is nothing. You call it by whatever it's supporting itself. That's the name of that consciousness on that one mind moment. So if your mind moment and now is suffering on that one little moment, that's who you are. You are nothing but suffering. Beyond that, there's no you. And then it changes. And they go apart on their own merry ways, and then they come again, and you exist because of that. But it's just mind moments, so to speak. And then if we go through this whole weekend today, the three characteristics of existence, all phenomena that arise from cause, so something is causing it to come, it's not persistent, it's changing, it's anicca. All phenomena, whatever we experience, that arise from cause, they're suffering. All phenomena are without a permanent essence. You cannot say that's just, this is who I am. You cannot put your finger on it. It's like that thing sometimes we say, especially with the kids, I like to do it. It's like, put your finger up and then point you. Where's you? Then you start doing this kind of things. Forehead. What do you think? Does body persist or disintegrate? Well, it comes apart, it disintegrates in the Venerable Soya Buddha. Is that what disintegrates, comes apart? Is that suffering or happiness? What is suffering? Because death is suffering. We talked about it. It is suffering, Venerable Sir. Is that what comes apart, disintegrates, is suffering and subject to change? Can you say that? Can you regard thus? This is mine. This I am. This is a permanent essence. No, Venerable Sir. Does experiences, Vedanas, experiences like suffering, happiness, suffering or happiness, or this neutral feeling, does it change, or does it persist or disappear? We can see that it's disappearing. We're not all the time suffering. We're not all the time happy. Even neutral feeling, we cannot really pay attention to it too long. Does it persist or change? Does the will stay the same or come and go and alter? Like, does your choosing or your will, like you wanted to choose it this way now? If you look at it 15 minutes later, is it exactly the same or had it changed? Is it dependently arising? Does it like depend on an advertisement, for example? It comes and goes and it changes. Well, because of that, can you regard this as this is mine, my will? This is I am. This is what I am. This is a permanent essence. No, you cannot say there's permanent essence in your will. You're choosing. Are consciousnesses constant or changing? Always changing, Venerable Sir. Is that what is changing? Always changing, suffering or happiness? Because there's change, it has to be suffering. Suffering, Venerable Sir. Is that what is inconstant, suffering, and subject to change? Can you fit to be regarded thus? This is mine. This is who I am. This is a permanent essence. No, Venerable Sir. I give it the last simile of the consciousness. Suppose a magician would perform a trick at crossroads. A person with good eyesight would have inspected, ponder it, and carefully investigate this magic trick. And it would appear to them as a void. We talked about emptiness, right? Hollow and deceptive. For what truth could there be in a magical illusion? So too, whatever kind of consciousnesses there is, whether it's past, the past consciousness we had, future, what is going to come, or present, whatever you have now, one's own, yours or others, gross or subtle, even kind of like just tiny little glimpse of that consciousness appeared. Inferior, superior, far and near. I hear voices, it's my head. You inspect and carefully investigate it, and it would appear to you as a void, empty and deceptive. For what authenticity could there be in consciousnesses? One who seeks eternity in consciousnesses seeks only for affliction of more rebirth. One who seeks for rebirth, I say, is not freed from suffering. So that's what we are trying to do. We grow disillusioned. We start turning away from suffering. This is what we're doing as Buddhists. We're going, and when you're turning away from suffering, you're turning away towards happiness. Oh, what a joy! There is no pleasure in the world. It's just I'm going towards away from rebirth, from this process of rebirth. So you're going towards more and more eternal happinesses. There is no matter where you get born, high heavens or low hells, or in Singapore and heaven in Singapore, there's always something which is not perfect. So what are we doing as a Buddhist? We're trying to develop these minds which are we're turning away towards more and more subtle happinesses, which is contentment. Contentment is something which is no matter what happens, you can be at ease with it. We have, for example, we talk about quite often about this Brahma Viharas. We talk about loving kindness. It's very common what we teach, right? Everybody always teaches loving kindness. One of those Brahma Viharas is upekkha. And sometimes translated as equanimity. It doesn't really evoke feelings. What does equanimity feel like? Not much. But you can, it's like the same way, like what does loving kind feel like if you haven't developed it? You can go deeper and deeper, and you start having a lot of pure loving kindness, and it's a really nice feeling. It's like probably mothers know it better than others when you have a baby and you really have this like, I want to take care of this little being. There's that connection there. So that's why it's one of the similes of loving kindness is having a baby. But equanimity as well, like it has to be a feeling tone. Equanimity is a feeling where it's content. It's very close to being content, easily satisfied. You're just sort of And actually, if you look at this, like how the equanimity is being used, like you see your kamma. We are inheriting our kamma. It's like this stream of consciousness depends on that kamma. It's limits, the kamma limits that stream of consciousness. You depend on it. It's your equanimity is that where you start looking at it with at ease. You have contentment. No matter what happens, I can be at ease, content with it. Contentment is a little bit more easier to sort of feel. It feels like something. Contentment is that feeling when the last day of school, before the break, and you're walking towards home, you're 7 years old, and you have this little backpack, and it's like you're just walking. It's like you don't have to get a summer job, and the holiday feels really long, and you just like have this little, like books in there, but it's just sort of like, oh, it's so nice. I'm going home, and I don't have a homework tomorrow. It's like, you're just so content. That's the contentment, and you can imagine what the Buddha felt when all the homework was done. No more, like, it's not just like a little, you're retired now, or you have a holiday in front of you. It's like the Buddha, perfect, it's complete retirement. So you can imagine what contentment the Buddha had, like this feelings go deeper and deeper. So always remember, in Dhamma we try to evoke feelings. There's like, this path has to feel something. You cannot will yourself out of this, or you cannot think yourself out of this. You need to feel yourself out of this, into the Nibbana. Da-da-da. Great. Okay, so that's enough for this week, and now we go into Q&A. Thank you, Santa.
Sadhu, sadhu. Questions? Okay. Dr. Andrew.
And thank you for the great talk, Ajahn. I just have one question about free will. I asked Ajahn Brahmali before as well, but I wasn't too convinced with this answer. So see what you say. So if
this teacher says this and you said this, how does okay?
So if there is no free will, if everything is predetermined by causes and conditions that happened before, then isn't that a form of determinism that the Buddha said is a wrong view as well?
In the form, sorry, can you? So, if you have a deterministic view that is sort of
everything is conditioned,
yeah,
and everything is there's no free will at all for you to decide to do anything.
Yeah, I heard that question before. Yeah. Luckily, I was with Ajahn Brahmali when he answered those kind of questions. I just say, like he said, I was like, well, it's a bit of a moot point. You can argue about this. So it's like, is there a wiggle room? That's the thing, and it is interesting that there's like, you cannot say that there is like, that there is choice or there isn't choice. It's sort of like, you argue both ways. Like I said, it's a moot point. So if you would say that there is perfectly no free will, that is almost like everything is deterministic. That is like no matter what you do, it's like it's predetermined. You will go that way. Like you can almost like you can trace back all the conditions, and you just go like, and it's like a train. The train is going that direction. There's nothing you can do about it. But so that would be the ultimately deterministic view. And then there's the other one where it's like you have free choice. You can actually choose. So there is something there where like you can choose whatever you want. Well, in that reality, you could choose jhanas. Choose them. Please do. But you're not conditioned to choose them. You can only choose what's available. That's the point. So on the table today, on the food table today, I can choose whatever was on that table. I cannot choose outside of that. If there's apples and pears, I can choose between apple and a pear if I want to eat some of either one of those. But I cannot choose watermelon because it wasn't there today. So you can choose what's available to you, and also you choose from your previous conditioning affects it. It gets sort of quite subtle. like what is that conditioning? It's like, can you go beyond that per se? You start getting more and more there. It's like you come to a crossroads and it's like, why go that direction? But maybe there was like many conditionings coming together, and it's in that sense there's like it was 51% that way, so you sort of choose to go that direction, but all these conditions came together, and when you calculate all together all these conditions, like 51 was pointing that way, and you sort of had to take that way. And that's so it gets into this kind of tricky territory. But so no, there's no free will. So beyond the conditioning, but it's hard to see what the conditioning is.
But what I'm asking is, how does that go with the Buddha's teaching that determinism is also a wrong view?
Yeah, again, I mean, change is a variability. So you, whatever. So you try to go to a places to. So okay, let's put it this way. We were here today, we meditated a bit, and we listened to the Dhamma. We are now conditioned by the Dhamma. And then, so that conditions you choosing. I'm not sure I'm answering a question. I'm sort of like just repeating myself. And he's like, I know what you're saying, but so we put ourselves into position that what can condition us. So you choose not to go to a nightclub tonight and get loaded because you know it's like, oh, that's it's not good conditioning. So are you choosing the conditioning then, but like something but you all sort of like you can reason that this conditioning is not good for me. So in that sense, you're just sort of changing that. Yeah, you have to ask smarter monks than I am. Like, look, but
Ajahn,
yeah.
Ajahn, can I answer?
Oh, great, you can, yes.
If it's predetermined, it means no matter what you do, you will end up there. Let's say you will end up this rebirth, even though you do very good things or very bad things. Somebody say you will end up a deva, you will end up a human being. Don't worry, you can go and commit crimes and killings and all that. You will end up there. So no matter what you do, but Buddha is saying, no, you must do whatever you can now to determine your future existence. So you can still change the path. Now, let's say your past karma is pushing you this way, not so good direction. You do more good deeds and more meritorious actions to try and change it to that way.
But do you can you choose it yourself? Do you have free will to do it? That's the question.
No, yeah. What you can choose is do what you can do now. You can't choose what is in the past, and you can't choose what is in your future. Yeah, but you can choose now what you can do.
So we have free will. That's your opinion. So
we have choices.
So
right?
we do have. Okay,
choices.
Good. We have free will. Thank you, Eileen. Yeah, that solved it. Luckily, we have.
Like you said, we have choices where, according to the conditions. Like what Ajahn said,
but are those,
if there aren't like it's beyond you at this moment, like I cannot choose to get jhanas because I'm not there yet. Like Ajahn sits down, Ajahn Brahm or Ajahn Brahmali or even you, if you sit down, straight away you go jhana. But we sit and sit, also no jhana yet. So in that sense, what you said, it's not available, so we cannot choose those things. But what is available, we choose. Like between good and bad, we know unless you are
Yeah.
totally ignorant.
The thing
right?
is, like, we sort of go in circles, I think.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to,
Yeah.
inform you as well that
But at
it's
least
sort
you
of-
can choose what you think is good and meritorious.
Yeah.
And
But is it freely you choosing it, or is it like you're conditioned to choose it? Is there something beyond the conditioning? That's that's why Ajahn Brahmali says it's a moot point. So it's a sort of like it is and it's not. Your conditioning really chooses it. So like you think you're choosing it, but it's a little bit of illusion there. So you just try to make sure that your conditioning is good. So that's why I'm saying, like, go towards that conditioning, and that's why we are here in the Buddhist, fellowship, and we're conditioning each other, and that's
get brainwashed by
yeah.
all the ajahns.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we try to get good brainwashing, and then we
good
leaning towards that.
brainwashing.
Yeah, exactly. Good. Yeah. Next question here in the front, Eileen.
Hi, Ajahn. I wanted to clarify something about the consciousness and the mind. So, my question is, does awareness in the knowing also require mind consciousness? Or do you mean is that there is no conscious engagement, but there is mind object that pays attention in the knowing state?
What's the last part? So I can hear it, but based on
In the knowing state. So,
Sure. Is there anything beyond us, like if the no, there's no, it doesn't exist without us. Like if the conscious was gonna, let me see if I can quickly find, because it's quite nicely in this, it might be beyond me, but is there anything beyond that? No, it does. And if there's no conscious engagement with something, like I said, if you hear sounds all the time, but you cannot be aware of everything. It's almost like you could be aware of your tasting and hearing at the same time, and seeing and tasting and hearing, and feeling and tasting and hearing at the same time, and you just cannot be. The world is just, there's too much information even coming to your conscious awareness to begin with. You have to have that engagement with it. So, but beyond whatever that engagement is, whatever that triggers that the match, or the like supports it, that screen, the sheet or reeves or on that screen. Beyond that, there's nobody. It's just that's you. Beyond that, there's nobody there. There is some. Okay, I cannot find it now, but there is a very nice simile here in a book about this, like whatever you call it. It's whether you call it mind, or you call it consciousness, or you call it heart, whatever however you choose to call it. It's you cannot say like this is me, this is mine, this is never changing. The key idea there is that changeability, and it's like you cannot just say like this is who I am. It's like you cannot find self there per se, but so anything beyond that, there's nothing except that is you. Yeah. Other questions? Please ask. These are interesting ideas, and the.
Hi, Ajahn.
Hello.
I have a question about the last sentence you said, actually. You said you cannot will yourself out of this, and you have to feel yourself out of this. Can you elaborate what that means? My understanding is you cannot use logic to try and escape samsara or suffering.
Yeah.
And you can have to feel. What do you mean by feel?
Well, I mean, that's exactly what you just said, that mere reasoning alone doesn't take you out of it. It's, you kind of sort of think, because otherwise you would somehow think yourself out of yourself. as if you it's like I'm using logic to sort of trick myself. Like it doesn't work that way. You just sort of have to soften it, like kind of like, just like giving. You know, you give and the sense of self is less because of that. You feel good about it. It's like because of the act of giving, the sense of self disappeared, and you're using these kind of other things like loving kindness, reduce the sense of self. You cannot. It's an interesting thing, but you need to have a good self-confidence. You need to feel good about yourself in order to self to disappear. If you have a low self-esteem, you don't feel good about yourself. It's actually, you have quite a strong sense of self. You don't realize that, but that suffering actually makes the self really strong. So happy mind disappears. Suffering mind doesn't want to disappear. Same with the body. Like static, happy body disappears. Suffering doesn't disappear. So when we start developing this good mind states, we hold on to those mind states. It can disappear. The self starts disappearing. That's why we need to have a good soft mind, happy mind, clean mind. We give all these similes all the time. That's what we teach. And it's so you cannot logically think yourself happy. It's like, I'm not happy. Well, I'll just have metta. So I don't feel it. Oh, it's all right. Just logically think about loving kindness. Yeah, I'm mathematically thinking about kindness now. That's why it doesn't work that way. The contemplation one, where for example, is I'm a generous person. It's like you cannot just logically think about being a generous person without giving anything. You cannot just sort of trick yourself thinking into these things. You cannot. But once you start developing these mind states and you contemplate, make more of it, then that is you. In essence, that you are now that kind of kind, generous, compassionate person, and then you start getting. Then the mind can calm down. It's easier to get into static, and then you get into the jhanas. And then you disappear more and more. So what's missing between Ai-ling and jhanas, if she doesn't get there, is she just doesn't have enough of kindness towards herself yet. Honestly, that's how it works. The problem is before you get to the jhanas, it's almost impossible. So you doubt yourself. That's what you're doing. Well, I can't get there. No, there's nothing stopping you, but you have a sense of self, and that's stopping you. And the nice thing about sort of when you get there, then it's like a self-fulfilling feel that getting into deeper meditations, not even jhanas, but you sort of self disappearing, the body disappearing, nimittas. These are not even stages of really, really deep meditation. The memory of it evokes so much happiness that it always keeps pulling you in. Then jhanas are even way beyond that. Just getting once in the jhanas, and then that happiness of that letting go, just that memory is so strong that just by that coming to your mind, the flame starts, coming up. You just want to meditate, and it just pulls you in, the memory of jhanas. Yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn.
So same with the jhanas. It's actually a feeling. It's not a logically. You cannot. It evokes really strong emotion.
Any last question?
We're not in a rush, really, but. I won't be here back anytime soon, so better ask now.
Yes. Anything. You can ask Ajahn.
And you know what always happens? People come, I didn't dare to ask when everybody else was there, so then they come afterwards. Okay.
Thank you. On the seat of the mind, when you were talking earlier about is the mind in the body, we are more of the body than our mind. sorry, it would be a bit confused. But when I heard Ajahn Brahm say, is that okay to ask a question like this?
No. I'm just like people always like to compare. Like Ajahn Brahm says.
Yeah.
Luckily, I've lived with him for a long time.
Exactly. Exactly. That's why I'm asking. He says the mind is not in the body because, and he was talking about the evidence for rebirth that of evidence of people remembering their past lives, and so about the evidence that even damaged brains, there is a phenomenon, right, of I don't remember the term, that people regain consciousness for a few hours before dying, and they, right, and even though the brain is totally damaged, and this is baffling doctors. So the conclusion is that mind is not only, at least only, in the brain. And I mean, what could you elaborate on that?
Sure. How to start with that? So, yeah, he gives that example. What's the word again? It's like, who remember? Huh? Terminal lucidity is the word. So you're completely demented or you just get further and further into dementia. Nothing in the brain shouldn't be, or it's not active anymore. Yet you come, so to be, you are lucid. That for a little while before you pass away, because of that you go beyond the brain. So that's, for example, Ajahn Brahm uses that example of that you cannot just say that brain determines us, or we are because of our brain. It's like that's the modern science explanation. We live in our brains basically, but you could also say that's like, well, we have a lot of nerve endings on our stomach, and we have that's why they always talked about the gut feeling. And in olden days, it was like a strongly thought idea that is like we are our, what's our gut feeling is like that's what you should trust. And it's like, you could say, well, okay, well, because of so many nerve endings here that we almost have two brains. Like our tummy is actually determined how we decide. You don't actually decide. Partly you decide with your brain, but what about if you take your tummy out? It's like, well, is that like you have two brains now? Who's deciding? Okay, well then you could say the nerve endings, and there's like all these chemicals coming together, and that's you. But so again, we're sort of going to, even if you believe that, you cannot just say, well, because of these synapses and all that, and the wiring going this way, that determines you, or you kind of just sort of point, I'm here, no, I'm here, now I'm here. It's like you kind of just sort of point out, this is who I am, this is what makes me. But to that idea of that rebirth process, I find it fascinating that it seems to be that even the body, our mind seems to condition our brain, our mind seems to change our body, so to speak. If you read the literature of children who remember their past lives, for example, it seems to be that there is certain kind of, the mind changes the way our bodies look. So there's even that like way we looked before, it sort of comes into this life as well. It determines a little bit, like the mind determines the body, it affects the body. It's just like we think like the mind doesn't condition the body, but it does. And then the body affects the mind or conditions in a way that Ajahn Brahm gives the simile of a brain in that sense, that the brain works almost like a funnel. It's like it has to, we cannot understand the whole reality. It's just too much. Too much would be coming to our mind. So the brain sort of filters. That he uses the simile of a filter. Brain functions as a filter, and when the filter gets removed, let's say that terminal lucidity, for example, the filter is now gone. The mind can function freely again. So what else you could say about it? But it seems to be that's how it seems that the mind is filtered through the brain. But I don't think it's just your brain. I think it's many things coming together. So it's difficult, but yeah. But it seems to be that the mind I don't know if in every level, but we need a body for the mind to exist. It's like a vessel for the mind. It needs to the function in this world. We need to have the body for the mind. Mind itself cannot really, even if you're close to this realm, so to speak, and this goes in the Buddhist cosmology, but they have mind-made bodies, so to speak. If you look at the cosmology, that if once you exist closely here, you need to have some kind of form. So that's why we, rupa. What do we talk about? We talk about body, but you could say so it's a form. So we need to. There needs to be a form for that mind to exist, and even after passing away, it again. Coming from these stories of near-death experiences where people die and they come back, that they always say that they were there with their body, like it's a mind-made body, so to speak. Your mind takes an image of that body, and that when you go past, that follows with you. You don't know anything beside that, so you exist with the body, and that sort of that determines. This goes a little bit of speculation, but I would say that determines of when you next time you get born. That's the image what the mind takes, and that sort of determines or changes of the body on the next life a little bit.
Sorry. So while we are alive, the seat of the mind is the body, basically, right? It's not outside.
Seat of the mind is a body. Seat of the mind is a body.
The mind is not elsewhere. It's with the body.
It can exist without it, but only for a while.
Yeah.
Let's say, like in a deep meditations, the body is completely gone. You cannot feel your body. It's like it doesn't exist. Not even deep meditation, but no, awareness is still there. You cannot. No, you are aware of it. It's just the awareness is very slight. You just because otherwise same with the mind. It's like when you're sleeping, it's you who's dreaming your dreams. Dreams are weird, but it's always you experiencing those dreams. There's not like somebody else there. And the same the body, if you have pain in the body and when you're sleeping, the awareness is still there. You knew it. It's just awareness is there. So you're not sleep awareness is like low awareness, but you exist. But if you go into deep meditation or you go completely beyond that, you exist without your body for a while. And if you don't come back if you're gone too long, you won't come back. But what else I was going to say? The body and the mind is they cannot independently. They cannot exist too long. Yeah, so to speak. Yeah, you're welcome.
Is that why when monks meditate, it's like 7 or 8 days maximum?
Yeah, you have to determine. Okay, I better come back in a week from now. It's not said in the suttas, but we sort of refer from that. And so it seems to be that you go beyond, and then the body doesn't pull it back anymore. It's like that coma. If you're in a coma and if you start moving away, if there's nothing comes to your sort of these awarenesses, like hearing or seeing or anything, it doesn't pull you back anymore. You start moving away. And same, people seem to die when there's no other people around. Like you're going to the death process, and if you sort of wait until everybody, your family is there, and all that happens very often. And just recently, just happened in Perth, there was one Vietnamese person. I did his funeral, and his son was in Germany, and he wasn't dying. And then son came that morning, and he was there that day with his dad, and then that night the dad passed away. And then I did the funeral just before I came to this tour. So mind can will itself to be alive. The body to be alive. But it seems to be that it needs that kind of quiet moment where it's like that this world doesn't pull it in anymore, and it can just disappear. Yeah. So if you don't want somebody to die, you make sure that you touch them and talk to them. But if you do want somebody to move on, that because we do have to allow people. You give them permission to die, for example. I don't want you to suffer. Please, if you need to move on, and leave them alone. It doesn't pull them back anymore. Yeah.
Any more questions? Last chance.
I won't be back soon. Anyways, okay, thank you so much. I'm sure I will be back in some point if Eileen invites me.
Yes. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, we do it pay respect or?
Share merits?
Okay, sure.
Share merits and then we pay respects to Triple Chair.